Okay, so welcome everybody. My name is Sara Estelle Turner, and on behalf of the British Flower and Vibrational Essence Association and during International Essence Awareness Week 2019, I'm very happy to welcome Ian White of the Australian Bush Essences. Thank you so much, Ian, for joining us today and helping us share the message of essences out into the world.
That's a pleasure, Sarah. I love doing that, and it's great to chat with you again.
Yeah, so it's been a while since we've had a chat, so it's kind of nice to bring the energies back up. So this will, we hope, be going out to reach many people. We're recording this in September 2019, but it's something that can help over time as well. And we're using the overlighting theme of this particular International Essence Awareness Week of how essences can help us find our way forward during challenging times. So kind of just using the times on Earth right now. I know here in Europe there's lots of fear and uncertainty due to obvious reasons, without going into huge details of that, but a lot of people are financially worried. They're worried about their jobs, about their homes, about their freedom, and just how everything is rolling out on the planet. So if we could explore that with the wisdom of the Australian flowers, that would be amazing.
Yes, and look, for me, the beauty of my work with the essences has shown me that whenever there's a need arising in the society, the essences come down and meet that need. So as you said, we were talking about the technology, and you're in 3G, we're in 4G, we're about to be launched 5G, for example. And there's, a lot of people have very serious concerns about that. In fact, I just got an email while I was away last week saying they're going to put a smart meter to read the electricity in my home. And from what I've read, it creates a great deal of radiation. So, I rang through and said, look, no, I don't want that. And the cancellation order didn't go through. And so I've been organising to have that removed. And I think we have to be a bit more diligent about how we get exposed to, many environmental things as well. I mean, we're looking at the changes in the weather. We're in drought here in Australia. I've just come back from the centre of Australia, and had a group from Japan that I was showing out there, and some of the flowers which I was going to replenish, they weren't even there because of the drought. And it's been a couple of years since I was there, and it was great rains at that time. The whole centre was alive with flowers. But it's, I would say probably 3/4 of Australia is in drought at the moment. And what we're going to see with weather patterns certainly is we're going to have more storms, more violent weather. They estimate probably 200 million people a year will be affected either through drought, floods, or storms as a result of global warming. So, there's a lot of things going on. With the 5G, for example, and, sometimes we think, oh, well, more than 3G would be great, so we don't have problems with the technology doing recordings. But, so many people are getting zapped. We're exposed to so much more radiation. And, there's a remedy that I work with called mulla mulla. It comes from the hottest part of the country. And it's fantastic for dealing with all forms of radiation, whether it be solar, nuclear, electromagnetic, gamma radiation. So these are some of the tools which are available to us, and it's just a matter of letting people know about them so they got options to how to protect themselves. And I was out and about today and driving around, had Google Maps telling me, in 400 meters turn left and what have you. And it's like, well, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
You and I can probably remember days of driving around with a big map on our laps, looking there.
But very dangerous with it across the steering wheel.
Yeah, and then you're in a country where you don't speak the language, and you're trying to get totally lost and winding your window, trying to have communicate with someone who doesn't speak your language and vice versa. So to have Google Maps is great, yet let's get the benefits, but also let's protect ourselves from some of that radiation. And then there's a lot of uncertainty. I mean, you've got Brexit happening there with UK. I was teaching in Ireland and the UK just a couple of months ago, and the Irish are very concerned the impact it'll have on their country. You know, we've got Trump threatening to bomb Iran, which is not going to take that lightly. So, you know, there's a lot of turbulence going around. I think financially, a lot of people, as you mentioned, are really struggling. So I think when you focus on the negative things, the fears, you tend to manifest and attract them. And, you know, like one of the remedies that I work with is called sunshine wattle. And there's a long history of the colonial use of that flower. When the white settlers first came to Australia, they were very underprepared. They had 3 fishing hooks. There was no domesticated crops and animals. Most of the people, whether they were the convicts or the soldiers to supervise them, didn't really want to be there. And they made their huts out of what was called wattle and daub. And the wattle they chose was the sunshine wattle, which is that sense of hope and optimism. So, you know, there's, you know, lots of different things we can do, as well as, I suppose I see the essences I'm working with. The Spirit had described it once as a garden, that someone that you might be working with, you could give them a bush essence, you know, derived from flowers, or someone might need a spiritual remedy. It's like, you know, depending on what the person needs. And probably the more recent essence I've been working with along that spiritual line, and one is Isis, and Isis is actually a spiritual being who come through. She's the embodiment of the divine mother, the divine feminine, and her message is very much, give me your pain, give me your suffering, I'll give you love and courage. And I think that's where people are having a lot of emotional pain today, and it's like, you know, being able to deal with it and breathe and not close your heart down as a result of all that pain. And the other thing that I've really noticed, which is a big impact today, is the remedy we call the soul logos. And if I give a little bit of background to that, if we look at the very heart of the divine, some people call it the central sun, it's like that, you know, center of the cosmos of spirit. And these pulsations of raising consciousness come out in the form of this rays of the soul logos. And it's going not just here to our planet, the whole solar system, throughout the universe. And it's that impetus to raise consciousness, open the heart and expand. And this remedy is probably the most powerful I've been with. Not that it's better, it just turns that it just blasts spiritual blockages, which for some people can be a little bit intense. And it just brings them up and clears and bubbles and brews them. So, you know, we've got the emotional pain, we've got spiritual blockages, we've got in things helping with the environment. So for me, the beauty of the flower essences, and of course, you know, we look at the organisation, British Flower and Vibrational Society, it's dealing with those vibrational remedies. And the beauty is that they're safe, anyone can use them, and you're not going to create harm, and yet they're very specific for the times we're dealing in now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an exciting time to be here, when we kind of like surround ourselves. And I think that's what this week is doing, is helping everybody just plug back in to the positivity, to all the support that nature supplies us with. So I was having a look at your Divine Presence essences. They're ones that I haven't personally used, and they are calling me. So the Isis and the Solar Logos are 2 of those, aren't they?
Yep. And there's a rainbow, which is, the first 2 are more crown-centered energy, comes in through the crown, where the rainbow is a little bit gentle. It's coming in, taking what you need from the grid of light around the planet, taking in the colours through the chakras to gently open up and expand. We suggest often taking that one before the Soul Logos. And the 4th one is Gaia. And Gaia is, again, another spiritual being who came through this portal when the essence was prepared, made in England, in Glastonbury. And, you know, there were nature spirits, devas, and there was a whole teeming with those spiritual beings. And Gaia is, I mean, she's our earth mother. We are of the earth. I mean, literally, the elements which make us up come from the earth. And she's raising her vibration and consciousness, and she wants us to come on this journey with her. And part of that remedy is also having love and reverence for Earth. And now some people get very depressed thinking that, oh, we're going to destroy the planet. I can assure you that's misfounded arrogance, because that will never be allowed to happen. That, there's so much balancing of energies as Korean launches a nuclear bomb, or there's something else, then elementally Gaia is balancing all those energies. And if she wants us to be aligned with her, and if we don't, then we're going to suffer the consequences. There's going to be, to rebalance it, there's going to be those storms, there's going to be the floods, etc. Yeah. So I think it's in our advantage that we have that love and respect and work in cooperation with nature as well. So they're the four divine presence essences, and in summary. And again, we would take the Gaia helps ground you so you can take in those higher spiritual vibrations, especially the solar logos.
Beautiful. So what I love is that how the Australian bush essences are evolving is that you have your single essences and your combinations that kind of deal with the things, and I was looking on your website, you've got the repertory of symptoms now there on the website, which is really cool, so people can get really clear about what they need. But you also have the more spiritual essences, and both of them I think go very, very well together. So what I'd love to ask you about, actually, because the whole 5G thing is very up here right now, it sounds as if it is in Australia. And you mentioned Mulla Mulla from the Bush Essence range to help. So if somebody is living somewhere where 5G is rolling out, how can they protect themselves during the day? What would you recommend as a kind of protocol?
Okay, two things. The Mulla Mulla is in a combination called Electro. And just to show you the potency of it, Green Cross every year monitored the children in Belarus who have high nuclear radiation levels as a result of Chernobyl. Even that was 33 years ago now. It's all the radiations in the water table, it's in the soil, so children are being born with all sorts of cancers and radiation levels. So Green Cross monitors children. In the summer, they take the worst affected children to the Alps and they try different techniques. And the Electro, which the core remedy is the Mulla Mulla, was the most effective treatment they've ever come across for reducing radiation, cleared 43% of the radiation, nuclear radiation, in 2 weeks, plus the general health improved. So I would, my home, and what I recommend for people is have 4 bottles of Electro, one in each corner of your house. Now in my house, I've got 2 levels. So I've got 4 bottles on the top level, 4 bottles on the bottom level. And that just helps, not just with 5G, but we've got digital phones, we've got Wi-Fi, we're getting exposed so much more radiation. Now, the other thing that we've been developing is pendants. So we have an Electro pen, which is actually made from stock. So some people will put an Electro bottle near their computer, but it's actually better to be next to you. So that would be the other thing, having your Electro pendant on you, and simple things like the Electro bottles. At night when you're going to sleep, turn your router off and pull it out of the plug. I mean, there's quite a lot of different things you can do. In your bedroom, pull any plugs out of the wall socket, not just turning them off, for example. I think we're going to get bombarded with the amount of radiation from the 5G. I think we're going to have to do everything we can. I mentioned this group from Japan who've just come over here for workshops and to see the flowers. And I go to Japan every year and teach, and they've had Fukushima just a few years ago. There's nuclear waste still being released into the ocean as a result of that. So, when Fukushima happened, we gave away thousands of bottles of the Electro to our Japanese distributor to give to the people who are affected. And here you're on an island, you can't get off, and you're trapped there with radiation levels. And that radiation level is not just in Japan, it's monitored down the whole west coast of United States, all the way down to South America, down now to get to Chile. Yeah. So, we're just a global village. When something happens in one area, it has an impact on the whole planet. Yeah. We've got mercury levels incredibly high in rivers in Oregon, in the United States. That mercury has come from pollution in China. So, we are getting exposed when something happens in one part of the world to all of it. So the other thing that I recommend, just to keep you safe environmentally, is a combination we have called Purifying Essence. And it's got a remedy called wild potato bush in there, and it helps remove heavy metals from the body and other pesticides, for example, as well. And heavy metals are excreted through the kidneys. And also in that remedy, there are remedies 4 which deal with kidneys, liver, large intestine, the lymphatics. And there are emotions associated with those. And I'm sure a lot of people knowing will associate that we have fear associated with the kidneys, anger and resentment with the liver. So when you're taking that combination, not only are you stimulating the organs of elimination, especially kidney, to deal with heavy metals being released, but you're also getting an emotional detox as well. You're releasing the fear, you're releasing the anger. And we're seeing now in Western countries, 1 in 10 women getting breast cancer. Now, any cancer, there's a strong emotional component in there as well. So, you know, there's a push for detoxifying, but we need to do emotional detoxifying as well as the physical detoxifying. So they're basic things that, you know, like we need to look after within our environment. And then, of course, it's, well, our own personal things. Are you going through a lot of grief that you're holding on to? You know, are you becoming a perfectionist and getting frustrated because you don't achieve it? Are you a black-eyed Susan person, always giving the finger and getting stressed in traffic and annoyed and impatient, not sleeping enough because you're always doing things? So, you
used to be one of those myself.
Well, you made the good choice to move out of the out of a more densely populated area, go into a very nice rural area. Yeah. And certainly, you know, there's probably more black-eyed Susans in the bigger cities than you are in the country area. So well done to you, Sarah.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Thank you for giving us how we can use the bush essences for the radiation. We're actually dealing here with, we have got 3G, but we're actually dealing right now, and I mention this because it might be something that will be useful for others as well. We're discovering that we've actually got water ley lines under our house as well. So we're going through a whole feng shui rebalancing process. And so I'm guessing that all of these things can just like help balance the house where you live and the land where you live, which obviously then has a knock-on effect on us.
Yeah, and I think having that sensitivity to feel what's going on as well. I mean, I think one of the most important things for anyone at the moment is having a quiet period in their daily life. You know, whether it's meditation or reflection, doing the rosary, but that quiet time, so minimum 20 minutes, just to listen to your own inner guidance coming through, and maybe, you know, spirit try and give you any messages as well, because I think that's, rather than us charging through on an intellectual level trying to work out what we need to do, that's where we get true wisdom, when our heart and our head connect together. And that's where we get that wise counselling, that intuition coming through, giving us a sense of, okay, what's that next step? What do we need to be doing? And taking time to really listen to those messages.
That makes such a difference, doesn't it? I know myself, when I do that, it changed my life, literally, when I started doing that. And when I don't do it now, I notice a huge, huge difference. So maybe that just brings us on to another side of what we can talk about while we're here today. You've shared about the more environmental 5G aspect and how we can clear ourselves, both emotionally and energetically through the meridians. But for anybody that is maybe newer to essences, or dealing with just kind of like a really challenging time in their life for whatever reason, and they're not sleeping very well, they've got the head spinning round, they don't feel in touch with their intuitive side, you know, what would you recommend for those? I know you've got some amazing things that can help.
Yeah, and look, this is so common for what people are going through at the moment. So there is a combination we've got called Calm and Clear. And one of the remedies in there is specific for, as you said, all the thoughts going round and round, and you can't stop thinking about it, getting upset or overly focused on it. And for some people, that's the thing that's stopping them going to sleep. They go to bed and their head's just going round and round, thinking of, a problem or drama or something they can't stop thinking about. And also Crowia is a remedy in there. It's a beautiful remedy, works on the muscles and worry. So it starts to relax the body and stop you worrying about things. And, if you talk to dentists, they would say about 80 to 90% of the population are grinding their teeth at night. And that's because there's so much tension that even when we're asleep, we're tense and grinding away. So not only does that have an impact on our teeth, but like for our whole body, if we're very stressed, we're going to produce adrenaline and cortisol, which are pretty toxic substances when they're being produced, on a regular basis. And, getting a bit distracted and scattered and, when we get stressed, there's the beautiful flower jacaranda, has a purple flower. It flowers in the summer here in Australia when people are getting busy just before Christmas. And it lays this beautiful mauve carpet when all the petals fall on the ground.
Amazing trees, aren't they? I've never met one, but I've seen photographs of them. They're extraordinary.
And, in colour therapy, I've got a Waratah behind me, red, which is energy, vitality. But, when you're overly busy and you need something to calm you down, which is the other end of the colour spectrum, which is the purple and mauve coloured flowers. Yeah. So that's a good one. And the other remedy there is pawpaw. Now, some people will know that as the fruit, and they know that there's an enzyme papain in there which helps digest protein. But as a flower essence, it works on the stomach, but also digests ideas and information. And if you've got too much information, you're going to overwhelm. And what pawpaw does, it chunks large blocks of information into smaller bits we can assimilate. And again, when people are in overwhelm, there's so much they've got to do, that's when they get stressed and tired and all those other things. So all those remedies are in the calm and clear. And it's not only is in drops, but you can use it as a cream, rub it on your face, also on your feet, which brings the blood from your head down to your feet when you go to bed so you can sleep better. You can also, if you've got children, they're not sleeping well, you can spray the bedroom with the calm and clear spray just before they go into bed, and they'll start to settle down and go to sleep much more effectively. And that's probably of all the things I see my patients, some are eating organic, they're exercising, meditating, but the thing that they probably consistently don't do as a group would be sleep. They're not getting enough sleep. And they used to think that insomnia was a symptom of depression. Now they know insomnia creates depression. It's the other way around. And I think we're so busy, we don't have the 24 hours in the day we used to. So if you're trying to do everything you used to do, you just got to stay up later and later and get them done. And in Japan, like the busiest time for the internet, personal internet time, is 1:30 to 2:30 in the morning.
Wow.
And that's when they've got some time to themselves and they go online. But they're not sleeping. And then they're up at, 7 going off to work. And I finish teaching, go back to my hotel, and you see all these office blocks, and it's 10 o'clock at night and people are still working. So, it's getting enough rest. And there's cycles. I've studied numerology for the last 40 years, and every patient I treat, I do the numerology, and there's a 9-year cycle. I'm actually in the what we call the 4-year, which is the whole calendar year of 2019. Means that if you don't rest up and look after your body, you can really get sick when you're in that year 4. And, but I think it's just like nurturing ourselves, taking good care of ourselves and feeling we're worth it.
Yeah. So you've just reminded me about the numerology. I remember I did a weekend with you, or as a day back in the UK years ago, and I got into that quite a lot. And I looked at it actually not so long ago. I've got a feeling I might be around that 4 year as well, which kind of makes sense. So yeah. So before we finish, and as you mentioned in itself, I think we need to mention that beautiful Waratah that's behind you, that's been speaking to people, whether or not they've been aware of it while you're talking. So please share with us a little bit about her message.
Okay. So Waratah was the highest flower for the Aborigines. The only flower they gave the white settlers when they came there was their highest flower. And in the diaries of the first fleet, when the first settlers came, they noticed if the Aborigines were sick, they would put Waratah in water and then drink the water. And, there's a good friend of both you and me, and I'm sure many listeners would know Eric Pelham. And Eric came out as one of many keynote speakers when I held the Third International Flower Essence Conference in Australia. The first one was Philippe Durard in France, the Diva Laboratories, and that was in 1990. Sabina Pettit from Canada held the second Flower Essence Conference just in Vancouver, Ireland, in 91, and we did the third one in 92. And Eric, in his talk, he said, amongst the divas, there are 5 master flowers on the planet. And he said Waratah was one of those. And certainly it's a very powerful flower. And it's that black night of the soul, despair, feeling suicidal. And one of the scariest things that's happening is that there's an increase in suicide for young females across the board in most Western countries, where we know that men will commit suicide 4 times more than women, but that's the new trend of young women taking their own lives. And, there's a community, Aboriginal community up in Queensland in Australia, and they sent all their elders and some of their social workers down to do a workshop with me because suicide was destroying their community. The grief and sadness of the people, and they want to know what essences could help, and they went away so excited with the Waratah. They actually had the highest suicide rate of any documented community in the world. It was very devastating, especially among the young people. And suicide's a major cause of death for men under 40 and for women under 30. And there's also a spike again for men around the age of retirement, that, they finish their work, which has been their main focus, and they may have had a family that they've lost, or they feel isolated, lonely. They pull away who they were in their career, and there's just an emptiness. They haven't built a rich inner life. And suicide really comes into play at that point. What Waratah does, it grabs you by the scruff of the neck and pulls you back. I mean, normally with bush essences for emotional things, we talk of taking a remedy for 2 weeks. But Waratah, it's going to work so much quicker, and it needs to. You can't say to someone if they're suicidal, well, take it for 2 weeks, and if you're still suicidal, repeat it again. And in a couple of days, it'll bring them back. It's a very deep acting. It's that black night of the soul. And probably one of the most satisfying areas in my work is getting a letter from, someone saying that they gave Waratah to someone and it saved their life. And at workshops, people have come up to me numerous times over the years and said, the reason I came here today was to thank you because I was going to kill myself and someone gave me Waratah, and I'm here today. And you can just only imagine the amount of pain someone is in if that feels like their best option is to kill themselves. Mm-hmm. And, we know at a deep level that everything that happens to us, only things that happen to us we can deal and cope with. But I guess when you're in that Waratah state, you feel like you're the exception to the rule. Mm-hmm. So it's a fantastic remedy, giving that strength and courage and love to bring someone back from the brink when they're really going through that despair.
Yeah, I've heard these things myself, and I know of people who I've taught as well who've used it, and it does work really quickly. A friend of mine actually uses essences, and one evening she was, doesn't actually have a happy ending, but it's just like a really great representation of how this essence does work. She lives alone, and she all of a sudden felt this huge kind of like despair come over her, and she didn't know where it was coming from. So she dowsed, and Waratah came out, and so she took it, went to bed, went to sleep, slept very well. Next day she discovered that the person next door, whose bedroom was literally the other side of the wall, had committed suicide. So it's like, wow. So, it was very shocking, but we also hoped that by her acknowledging it on some level, it helped. So it's just another confirmation of how strong that flower is.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
you know, like it's. I think everyone knows someone who's taken their life, or knows of if they haven't known them personally. And there's such, apart from the person who's in that much pain, that the grief and the guilt that's left behind, it can be really devastating for those people close to that person as well.
Yeah, so beautiful Waratah, and of course that's in your emergency formula, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the keynote. It's also our emblem of the company, because we saw,
of course it is,
the company back in the early 80s, and just seeing that all the changes we're likely to go through, that this essence gives such strength and courage to hang in there and deal with all of that. So, yeah. And it's in flower at the moment, you know, like I think if you people want to go to my website and go to the Facebook page, we just put up the Japanese, you know, seeing Waratah out in the bush, and they was just like, wow, they were so excited.
Wow. How big is it? Because we don't.
I don't know if you can see that. It's like the shape of the heart, and
it's quite big.
It works on the heart as well as emotionally. So it's I think there are 3 flowers: the Sturt Desert Pea for sadness, Waratah, and we also have the fringed violet, which is a very small little flower.
Yeah.
And to quote an English expression, when you see them in the wild, you get gobsmacked. I mean, just the power of them is so strong.
Yeah, I can incredible. Understand that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you so much. And just to finish, I was kind of tuning in before we started speaking today, and I kept getting pink flannel flower, pink flannel flower, pink flannel flower. So I'm very grateful, because pink flannel flower has a theme of gratitude, doesn't she?
She does. So if you look at the work from Emoto, the Japanese researcher, you know, did all the crystal photos of water. The 2 most powerful emotions are love, which we'd expect, but he said gratitude was equal to love.
Yeah.
And pink flannel flower, it hadn't flowered for 40 years when I made it up for that first time. In fact, the botanist doubted it existed, because there wasn't even any real good photos of it. And it only grows in a small area. It's what we call the Blue Mountains, which is a couple of hours inland from Sydney. And again, this is an example of how, when there's a need of society, essences come down. And this remedy is very important for children, because so many of the children incarnating in this millennium are here to heal through their capacity to love. And their heart chakras are wide open. And yet, coming in contact with some of the not so nice aspects of humanity, their hearts close down. And this, especially for children under 5, it keeps their heart chakras open. And for those of us older than 5, it's as you said, working on that gratitude. And when I made it up the last time, I told some of the people who work in production, you call them the petals, and 5 of the petals went to this area to see it, and they got out of the car, and they saw all the pink flannel flower around them, and every one of them burst into tears. It was such a moving flower. And the pink is the love vibration in color therapy, and it's got a really lovely pink. And it's almost like wearing rose-tinted glasses. You see the world from the really positive side. It's like if you got a sore toe, rather than thinking of your sore toe, you think, wow, I've got 9 toes, which are fantastic. You know, it just really changes your perspective. Things you tend to take for granted, the good things in your life, and focus a little bit on some of the things which may be more challenging. It brings you back to think, wow, some really great things here on the planet, in my life, and really can change your outlook, bring a lot more joy, and a really lovely heart remedy.
So it kind of brings us full circle, really, doesn't it? Just back to, yes, there are very challenging things going on, and we've mentioned many things that can help, but again, being grateful, and pink flannel flower can just like really encircle us with different energy, so that whatever's going on doesn't get through.
Yeah, and also just be aware of all the beauty and the wonderful things, which again, sometimes we can easily take for granted.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ian. Thank you for your time today. I know that lots of people will be watching this and will be feeling better as a result of having connected in with how they can empower themselves, and there are things that we can do. And yeah, so thank you very, very, very much. And yeah.
Great. I hope everyone's enjoyed listening. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll find out via the comments when
Okay,
when this goes live. Okay, thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.